Going forward, I'll probably do just one still image instead of the PNG tuber thing. If that doesn't hold your attention, go ahead and play Subway Surfers or something while you watch. It's just easier to edit. Well, with all that noise out of the way, let's get down to the brass tacks. What locomotive do you feel represents the Central Pacific? The dignitary of the West? Jupiter? Perhaps one of the sole survivors, like 233 or Stockton Terminal and Eastern 1. Maybe one of the groundbreaking paragons of Stevens innovation like 229, which, as a brief aside, I don't think anyone's ever made a model of, and they probably never will. Maybe a locomotive thrust into the limelight from an entirely apocryphal story like Antelope. Or maybe this hunk of garbage. Me personally, I think of 173, the locomotive that defined the style of A.J. Stevens. Originally built by Norris Lancaster in 1864 for the Western Pacific, 173 was acquired with the rest of the railroad in their stock by the Central Pacific in 1869. 173 would be involved in a catastrophic wreck with the 177, leading both locomotives to be entirely rebuilt from the ground up, enough so that they'd be listed as being built by Stevens rather than their respective builders. 173's rebuild was completed in 1872 and became the pattern for Stevens' signature American types, including the surviving Virginia and Truckee Dayton. The rest of 173's career as a workhorse was relatively unceremonious. She first worked as a freight locomotive, then moved to suburban service. She was renumbered when the railroad was absorbed by the Southern Pacific twice, and quietly scrapped in 1909. So why did history remember this locomotive? Because of Walt Disney. My love for 173 comes from the love of Central Pacific and Stevens, not Disney, so I won't go down that rabbit hole. There are plenty of great videos on YouTube already about this matter, so give it a search if you're curious. Now, onto the model. Why did I choose 173? Because my friend Nathaniel, who runs an online storefront on 3DP Train and developed a really fun little game that recently released, also happens to be an incredibly talented 3D modeler. He made some just spectacular parts to create this locomotive out of a Bachmann new tooled 440 and posted photos of his fabulous rendition, and every time I saw them, the temptation to make my own got greater and greater, and eventually I caved. He was so kind as to give me some yet unreleased files to really go the extra mile with this build, which I bought a 16K printer to honor the fidelity and get a really crisp final product. The process was simple. Step 1. Source a chassis. This part was a no-brainer. I had my childhood NT440, originally Jupiter, sitting in my drawer in pieces. Every time I opened the drawer, it would plead to me, "Pony, Pony, please don't let me die. I want to make you happy again." And how could I say no to that face? One new shell and wheel sets later, we were in business. Carve off the stock detail, lay down some new boiler bands, make a menagerie of piping, levers, and whatever else needed doing. Fun fact, Stevens patented the first steam ringer, and that strange rod you see going to the bell is exactly that. He also equipped the first locomotive with power reverse, number 229 in 1882. Good thing no one's stupid enough to try and model something like that. That would be insane. Since there exists exactly one photo of this locomotive any time before the Southern Pacific made a complete mess of her, whatever was on the engineer's side, it was anyone's guess. So I decided to try and replicate her number neighbor, 172. They're both on the medium to light side of 440s, unlike the much heavier scratch-built Stevens sisters. They also both started as Norris Lancasters, so it just made sense. Painting for this locomotive was hell. I won't delve too much into detail, but there was a lot of strip, paint, damage, repair, repaint, repeat happening. Then I found out I got a bum decoder, which set me back a little bit. Once that was sorted, I waited for my decals to arrive. And waited, and waited, and waited, and waited. After the ice caps melted and flooded the earth in a biblical retribution for the hubris of man, my decals finally arrived, and the locomotive was completed. I hope you enjoyed this intimate look into the building process behind a very special and beautiful locomotive. It really was a community effort, and to everyone who contributed, especially Nathaniel, I want to extend a massive thanks. Let's get running. As a brief aside, if you see a weird locomotive sitting in a siding, don't worry about it. That's the new Broadway limited big boy they released to include the gum under the seat that got stuck under there last week. There is no Stevens Mastodon in Ba Sing Se.
and the road winding goes from Golden Gate to roaring cliffside, and the light softly low as our hearts become sweetly untied beneath the sun. California one.